Hi, I'm David Sawyer with the Alabama Policy Institute. Have you ever wondered about the money put into the education system in Alabama versus the outcomes, meaning what are we getting out of it as far as the student benefit? Well, the Alabama Policy Institute felt it important enough to research that, and we've put a 100-plus page report together illustrating the money put into education in Alabama versus what we're getting out of it. Next up, we're going to hear from the author of the study, Dr. John Hill. Dr. Hill boils down this study to give us the nuts and bolts on what this study is saying and why we should be concerned.
We looked at about 1,300 schools across the state in each of the 130 school districts in the state of Alabama, and we came up with this study, a rather large study. Does funding influence outcomes? What we learned was that contrary to conventional wisdom, that the quality of our inputs, that is the things that we're contributing to our public education system in the state of Alabama, are rather good. We tried to create as fair of a comparison of Alabama to other states in the nation in terms of teacher pay, graduation requirements, teacher qualifications, the amount of money that is being spent in the classroom, the percentage of employees in the overall education establishment that actually are in the classroom teaching as teachers or instructional aides. And in almost every one of those categories, Alabama is above average or near the top. So our inputs are very good. It's when you look at the outputs that things are a little bit different. Within the state, when you look at our state graduation requirements and you look at how well we do on reading and math tests and assessments of writing and so forth, within the state we do rather well. But when you compare us to other states using standardized tests like the ACT or the National Assessment of Education Progress, the NAEP scores, we're at the very bottom again. Our ACT scores are below the national average and they have not risen in 12 years. Our NAEP scores are near the bottom as well, and while our scores are improving, the national average scores are also improving, so we continue to lag behind the rest of the nation. So our inputs are good, but there's a disconnect with our outputs. We looked at schools where there's a lot of money going in terms of federal money, and some state and some local money, and their outcomes are worse than the rest of the state. On the other hand, you have a bunch of schools that get a fair amount of state money, a modest amount of federal and local money, and their outcomes, considering what they're getting, are far and away better than the rest of the state as a whole on every measure. So money in and of itself isn't the solution. It doesn't mean that we take the money away. That would be bad logic to assume that if money is the problem that we get rid of it. You can't take money away from the public education system and expect students to thrive. Rather, we think that it might be the kind of money, or it may be things that are going on outside the classroom that are affecting the outcomes of our students. So my hope would be that educators, people in the education administration, concerned parents would want to look at this study and say, how well is my school performing considering the inputs and the outputs, and what can my local school district do to bring those things up if the answer is not money?
We hope we've piqued your interest with Dr. Hill's comments. Now, after we release the study, we've received some positive and negative feedback. In the next segment, Vice President Jeff Fink with the Alabama Policy Institute addresses some of those concerns.